Congressional Record published Wednesday, June 18, 2025. The Senate was not in session on June 18, 2025. The House of Representatives convened briefly on Tuesday, June 17, 2025. Speaker pro tempore Barry Loudermilk, a Republican from Georgia, presided over the session. Reverend Daniel B. Carson of St. Peter's Catholic Church in Washington, D.C., delivered the opening prayer, asking for wisdom and harmony in the work of Congress. The House approved the journal of the previous day's proceedings and recited the Pledge of Allegiance. A message from the Senate was received, informing the House of the passage of Senate Bill 1467. This bill seeks to amend the Fair Credit Reporting Act to restrict consumer reporting agencies under certain circumstances. The Senate requested the House's concurrence. Several executive communications were submitted and referred to committees. These included final rules from the U.S. Forest Service on ski area authorizations, Environmental Protection Agency rules on chemical safety and air quality, Federal Communications Commission regulations on space and Earth station fees, and fisheries management rules from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration for various U.S. regions. These were referred to committees on agriculture, energy and commerce, and natural resources. The House introduced numerous bills covering a wide range of issues. Representative Ed Case, a Democrat from Hawaii, introduced legislation to establish grants for resilient energy systems in remote and tribal communities. Representative Steve Cohen, a Democrat from Tennessee, proposed amendments to protect students and taxpayers regarding proprietary higher education institutions. Other bills addressed military recapitalization, Medicaid continuous enrollment, substance use disorder treatment, Caribbean basin security, universal service contributions for telecommunications, endangered species protections, financial transaction taxes, congressional ethics reforms, wildfire response standards, ferry service funding for rural areas, domestic violence prevention training, forest management exemptions, Vietnam War commemoration programs, agricultural cybersecurity centers, ocean acidification research collaboration, STEM apprenticeship grants, workforce skills accounts, employment test compliance. Several resolutions were also introduced. Representative Thomas Massie, a Republican from Kentucky, along with Representatives R. Khanna of California and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York, introduced a resolution directing President Donald Trump to remove U.S. armed forces from unauthorized hostilities in Iran under the War Powers Resolution. Other resolutions condemned recent violent riots in Los Angeles and attacks on Minnesota lawmakers. The House recognized St. Joseph's Hospital in Savannah, Georgia on its 150th anniversary and expressed support for Israel's defense efforts against Iran. Members honored individuals and organizations for their service and achievements. Representative Gus Bilirakis, a Republican from Florida, recognized teams involved in electrification projects for Navajo families. Representative Darren Soto, a Democrat from Florida, highlighted leaders in the LGBTQ+ community during Pride Month. Representative Mark Vasey, a Democrat from Texas, celebrated cultural contributions through Taekwondo associations. Representative Timothy Kennedy, a Democrat from New York, marked healthcare expansions and community milestones. The House adjourned at 11:02 a.m., with plans to reconvene at 11 a.m. on Friday, June 20th. In the Senate on June 17, 2025, the session opened with prayer by Pastor Randy Phillips from Austin, Texas. Senator Tim Sheehy of Montana presided as acting president pro tempore. Senator John Thune, the majority leader and a Republican from South Dakota, addressed recent tragic shootings in Minnesota that claimed the lives of State Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband Mark. He praised law enforcement for apprehending the suspect and called for full prosecution while offering prayers for victims and survivors. Senator Thune also condemned Iran's leadership for supporting terrorism and enabling attacks against Israel. He noted Israel's recent strikes on Iranian sites linked to nuclear programs and expressed solidarity with Israel. The Senate debated national security concerns and budget reconciliation legislation. A Republican senator defended proposed Medicaid reforms aimed at reducing waste and fraud while protecting vulnerable populations. The senator highlighted rising Medicaid costs and efforts to impose work requirements and close loopholes exploited by some states. Democratic senators criticized these proposals as harmful cuts that threaten healthcare access for millions. They warned that Medicaid reductions could lead to hospital closures and increased insurance premiums. Senators expressed concern about reductions in domestic extremist prevention programs under President Trump's administration. They called for restoring resources to combat rising political violence and urged the president to condemn inflammatory rhetoric. The Senate passed the Genius Act regulating payment stablecoins by a vote of 68 yay to 30 nay. This bipartisan legislation establishes a federal framework for stablecoin oversight to protect consumers and maintain financial stability while preserving state regulatory authority. Senator Alex Padilla of California spoke about federal immigration enforcement actions in Los Angeles. He criticized deployments of federal agents and military forces without state consent as extreme measures undermining constitutional principles. Senator Padilla recounted being forcibly removed from a press conference while seeking answers about these operations. The Senate confirmed Olivia Trusty of Maryland to the Federal Communications Commission and Gary Andres of Virginia as Assistant Secretary of Health and Human Services. Senators commemorated the 10th anniversary of the Mother Emanuel AME church shooting in Charleston, South Carolina. Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina delivered a moving tribute honoring the victims' legacy of forgiveness and resilience. Senator Maria Cantwell of Washington praised students excelling in national history competitions. Senator John Hickenlooper of Colorado criticized proposed budget cuts to Medicaid and SNAP benefits as damaging to working families and rural hospitals, while favoring billionaires with tax breaks. Senators debated fiscal responsibility concerns related to national debt growth and criticized tariffs imposed under President Trump as harmful to economic growth. Senators also discussed the constitutional powers of the President of the United States. They reviewed executive authorities including war powers, treaty negotiation, judicial appointments, executive orders, and presidential succession under the 25th Amendment. A Judiciary Committee hearing was announced to examine alleged presidential incapacity during former President Joe Biden's tenure. Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia emphasized Congress's constitutional role in authorizing war and introduced a resolution requiring Senate approval before military action against Iran. Senators expressed strong support for Israel's right to self-defense, while cautioning against rushing into war with Iran without congressional debate. Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota delivered heartfelt remarks honoring Melissa Hortman and her husband Mark following their tragic deaths in a politically motivated attack. She praised their public service and called for unity against political violence. Senator Jeff Merkley of Oregon criticized budget proposals that favor billionaires over working families and threaten clean energy progress. Senator Mark Warner of Virginia supported the Genius Act as essential legislation for regulating digital assets responsibly. Senator James E. Risch of Idaho presented notifications of proposed arms sales to Australia and Italy involving advanced defense systems and missiles. Several senators added their names as co-sponsors to bills addressing tax policy, veterans benefits, environmental conservation, national security sanctions, immigration status protections, cybersecurity improvements, healthcare payment reforms, and other issues. The Senate adjourned at 7:19 p.m., with plans to resume on June 18th at 11 a.m. Thanks for listening. The full source material for this summary is in the description below.